Okay, excellent. Okay, so evening everybody, hope you're well. Just a quick recap on what we did last time. We were actually, we are on Zion Omid Aleph, just at the bottom of Vav Omid Bay, 6b. We ended off by saying that, so we've said that, the Mishnah said that a sukkah that has two walls and a tefach is kosher. So two full walls, Kihil Chosan, and a tefach. So the Gemara asks, so the bottom, three lines up from the bottom of Vav Amud al base, where do we place this third wall? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav, Amidu Keneged Hayot. Says, Rav says you place it next to the distant wall, meaning so you've got two walls. Let's have a look. Let's get our diagram up. Remember which one it is. Not that one, not that one. Very simple. Here you go, very simple. You've got two walls which are the correct size, full walls. The third one you put here against the end wall. You can put it here as well. Either way you can put it. Okay? It's very straightforward. Okay. That was Rav. Rav said, place it next to the external wall. Amri lei Rav Kahana Rav Asi Rav. So Rav Kahana and Rav Asi said to Rav, now we're right at the top here, top of the Amud. They said, no, you should place it at the head of the branch. And we saw the Rashi. Rashi gave us two possibilities. Again, I'll show you the diagrams, it's easier to say. Rashi gives us two possibilities. Rosh Torah either means, again, just as Rav said, at the end of one of the full walls, but rather than straight down like here, you have it at an angle. As we said, that's how they used to plow the fields with gradually getting narrower and narrower, or shorter and shorter. So it'd be like in a diamond formation, a triangle formation. In order that it would give the appearance of closing up the gap. So these dots are a notional wall. But doing it like this, because it now faces towards this full end and full wall here, it in some way appears as if you're closing up the gap. The other option Rashi suggests is like this. It's always on a diagonal. Rosh is always going to mean at an angle, it's diagonal. So the tefach wall has to be at a diagonal according to Rav Kahana. The other option is also at an angle. Here are your two full walls, 1, 2. The third wall of the tefach would go here in the major gap. So this is a notional wall here. This is a gap here. And again, because it's at this angle, on this space, again, maybe move it in slightly, maybe move it more in line, more in line with the ends of these two. So if we shift it in slightly, maybe more like there. I'll just draw it in. Just thinking about it, maybe if we draw a notional line there, and we would then put it somewhere like this here. Mm-hmm. Again, you see, so there is going to be the dotted lines are the notional walls. Apple. These are this is gap. But again, you can see based on that idea, again, it's an idea of closing up the gap, making it at least look like it's enclosed. So those are the two suggestions. Okay, top of the line, carry on top of the line. Shosik Rav didn't answer, he was quiet. He didn't agree or disagree with them. And says the Gemara in support of Rav's original position, which is, no, you only need it to be a straight down tefach here. Doesn't need to be anything else than that. No more fancy than that. Itma nami amashmuel mishmei de Levi. So it was also stated similar to Rav by Shmuel in the name of Levi. Ma'amida neged hayot. So exactly the same as as Rav said. You place it by the end of one of the walls like this, in a straight, just straight down, either here or here, and that's absolutely fine. Similarly, they taught it in the base medrash. The same thing. That was a widely taught halacha. Okay. Rav Simon, fourth line. Rav Simon v'itema Rabbi Yoshi ben Levi. Amai said says, Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Ose loy tefach soche, uma'amidu v'pachos mishlosha tefachim samach l'dofen. So we now got a new suggestion. Rabbi Simon is going to say the following, that actually you don't even need it to be what we've assumed up to now, according to Rav. Well, actually, what Rav was saying is that this tefach wall is attached to the end of one of the full walls. Yeah, it's attached. There's no gap. Rav Simon will say, actually, what you can do is, and let me see if I can find that diagram. Yeah, I think that's what I did. I drew over it already. Let me draw it here very quickly. He would say, we've got this. Can you see that? Sorry, it's not very. You've got two full walls, and here's your tefach. In fact, actually, you can look. You look at the side of the Gemara. You can see it here. The small diagram on the right-hand side here. Yeah. Yeah, so you've got two full walls and you've got a third wall here. So he says, so Rav Simon will say, if you make a tefach soche, now up to that we said a tefach, about 6 to 8 centimeters. Rav Simon would say, no, you need a slightly larger, slightly extended tefach, which is tefach soche, a bit more than a tefach, and then place it within 3 tefachim of the end of the wall. So here there can be no more than a 3 tefach gap here. Okay. Now what's significant about the 3 tefachim is if it's within 3 tefachim, because Gemara says, carry on, because if it's within 3 tefachim of the solid wall, then it's called lavud. We extend it. We ignore this gap. Anything less than 3 tefachim is considered to be insignificant. So again, I'll put dotted lines. If this gap here is less than 3 tefachim, then we ignore it. We suggest that this tefach joint is as if it's joined. Okay. That was almost a bit like a leniency. Okay, that was the one suggestion. Next suggestion is end of the line, end of that was 2, 4, 6, 8 lines, 7 lines down. Amar Rav, so it says Rav, Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, Sukkah Sukkah Kamavoy Kashera. A sukkah made like an alleyway is kosher. So you've got, again, look at on the right hand side, you've got the second diagram here. It's like an alleyway. So you've got 2 parallel walls. Yeah? That's fine. That's kosher. As long as you then and the tefach you can attach to whatever side you want. So you've got 4 openings, as Rashi, to the mavoi. Here it is here. Here are the 2 parallel walls. Any one of these ends is where you can put the tefach. That's why I've already added them in. You only need one, but they can go in any of those 4 places. Okay? Attached to the end.
But surely it's less effective attached to the corner. Better in the center of the because you're allowed to have 2 gaps either side, 1 gap either side of it, and it makes up much more of a wall. A small corner like that will leave the rest of it open.
True. But this is what we seem to say. Halakha Moshe Messina is, as long as we never said that the 2 walls have to be joining, as long as you've got 2 full walls. Yeah, up to, we've suggested, if you look on the side of the Gemara, we thought that makes more sense to have it like that, 2 walls joined up. But
yeah, that looks the best.
Okay. But we're suggesting even, so Rabbi Yehuda is saying even like this is okay. And then just add a little extra tefach on either one of those. You're right. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Along comes Rav Simon again and says, we take Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, some say it was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Ama ose loy pas arba u'mashu, Says Rabbi Shua ben Levi, make a board of 4 and a bit tefachim, and then place it, as Johnny said, in the middle of the gap between the 2 parallel walls. So this diagram here. Yeah?
Yeah.
Why do that? It says Gemara, because then, when you've got it like this, as long as that gap is less than 3 tefachim, we ignore it, and we consider it as if they're attached. Okay, and as you said, it's far more enclosed than it would be if you just stick a little bit on the end there. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So it says the Gemara now, so we've had 2 suggestions, right? We've had the suggestion of a tefach sochek, an extended tefach, as long as that was less than 3 tefachim away from the edge, from a full wall, we say lavud, it joins up. When it comes to the mavoi, though, when it comes to the alleyway, we said, Rav Simon said, Rav Shua ben Levi said, that you have to have a board of at least 4 tefachim, 4 and a bit tefachim, for there to be lavud. So Gemara asks, what's the difference? Why in this case does this board have to be? Yeah, why does this board have to be 4 and a bit tefachim, whereas this one only needs to be an extended tefach? Okay. Remember what we're saying is, remember we said that for a wall has to be, the minimum dimensions of a wall are 4 tefachim. Yeah, the definition of a wall of mechitza is 4 tefachim minimum. So here, how does it work? How does it work? This is tefach and a bit plus 3 tefachim, less than 3 tefachim of a gap. Here we're doing something brilliant. What we're saying is we're taking our tefach and a bit plus the less than 3 tefachim gap, and we're adding it together, making 4 tefachim. Then we're saying this gap is so insignificant, it is as if we've now got 4 tefachim here, plus a 3 tefachim gap, 7 tefachim. That's a kosher wall for a minimum size wall for a sukkah. So we know sukkah has to have a wall of at least 7. These are at least 7 here. And by some creative accounting, we're saying a tefach and a bit, plus the less than 3 tefachim gap, makes a board of 4 tefachim, plus the less than 3 tefachim gap makes a board of 7 tefachim, as if it's joined. We now have a kosher wall. Whereas here we're saying, only if you've already got a board of 4 and a bit tefachim, plus less than a 3 tefach gap, can we add them together and say 7 tefachim? Ignore the gap, you've got a 7 tefachim wall joined to one end. So I'm going to ask, why the difference? You see the difference? Here, a tefach and a bit, and yet we can turn it into a 7 tefach wall. Here, it already has to be 4 and a bit tefachim, plus the 3 tefachim gap for us to say 7. Why the difference? So says the Gemara, that's what Gemara asks. Umay shana, says Gemara. Umay shana hasam t'ka'amra sagi tefach sochek. Why there in the first case, this case here, where the walls are joined, that it's enough to have a board of a tefach and a bit. Umay shana hacha. Whereas in this case, we say to ka'amrat by pas arba. The board has to be already 4 tefachim. Answers the Gemara. You understand the question, right? So the Gemara answers, Hasam to ikashtei defanos kehil chasan sagele betefach sochek. There, in this case, where you've already got 2 walls according to halacha, 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim attached to each other, then an extended tefach is enough for us to add the 3 tefach gap plus that to make it 4 plus the 3 gap again to make it 7. Whereas in this case, the leika shetei defanos, where there aren't yet 2 walls. Yes, there are 2 parallel walls, but they're not connected, which is clearly worse than having this.
But that's misrepresented the way you've done it at the top, because you said those 2 defanot are 7 by 7, 7 and 7.
Yeah.
And you said that that small one is 3, the gap of 3 plus 4.
Yeah,
That's not,
notionally.
that doesn't look like 7.
Notionally. Notionally. No. Well, the diagram's wrong because look at the proportions. The size of that.
Yes.
Well, ignore that. It's just for illustrative purposes only.
Because it looks like it's much smaller than 4.
You're right. Not to scale. Not proportional. Illustration purposes only. Good point, though. Yeah.
Misleading. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
But again, maybe the way maybe the printers put it in like this in order to show that although actually in reality this is only an extended tefach, it can be considered as 4 tefachim plus a 3 gap is 7. Whereas
so halachically it's as good as one which has 4 tefachim.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because we start off with 2 good ones.
All right.
Whereas here we're now saying these aren't 2 good ones because it's 1 and 1, not connected to each other. Yeah, this is an alleyway. Yeah, you couldn't suggest this is in any way some sort of.
That's already a disadvantage compared to the first one.
Right, and that's why we have to be more stringent and say if you want to add in a notional third wall, then you need to start with at least something of a bit of chashivut already. Okay, so it has to be at least 4 and a bit tefachim on its own. Then we can add up the 3 tefach gap to make it 7 tefachim. Ignore the 3 tefach gap and say we've now got another wall of 7 tefachim along here.
And it's as good as a third wall.
Yeah, it'll be as good as this one, and as good as this one, and as good as completely 3 walls together.
But in this case, if the gap was only 3 on each side and the wall itself was just 1, you'd still get your 7, wouldn't you? And you'd still halakhically be within, because you're within the 3.
Well, no, that's the point that I was making. That's the point that I was making. That Rabbi Chapper ben Levi insisted that if you want to use lavud in this case, we're going to require actually to start with 4 tefachim. We won't be able to join it up unless there's already 4 tefachim. We need the minimum dimensions of a mechitza of a wall of 4 tefachim to start with before we can start then employing lavud to extend it into 7 and join them up. Because you haven't started with 2 good walls. You started with 1 wall and another wall. Whereas here you started with 2 good walls. And therefore we can say, you know what, slightly larger than the tefach is going to be good. We can then incorporate that extend it along 3 tefachim and say that's now 7 tefachim, 4 tefachim. So a tefach and a bit plus just less than 3 tefachim gives us just about 7 tefachim. We've now got a kosher wall. We'll now say this kosher wall of notionally 7 tefachim, since it's less than 3 tefachim away from here, is as if it's joined. And we've got 3, it's this one again, isn't it? It's as if we've got, actually, let's extend it. I'll just redraw it. Can you see? It's as if it's 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, an open-sided sukkah with one side open, perfectly kosher sukkah. Yeah, if you look closely, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Okay, so let's just see that back in the Gemara. In the first case, since you've already got 2 proper walls joined together, it's enough to have an extended tefach. Whereas here, in this case of the mavoi, the lekish stetefanos ikka pas arba in. If you've got a board of 4 tefachim, then yes, it will work. We'll add it to the 3 tefachim gap and say it's a 7 tefach wall. Ignore the 3 tefach gap and say it's joined on both sides. So again, it will look exactly the same notionally as this. Okay, we close the gap. Eloi, however, if you don't start off with at least a board of 4 tefachim in that gap between them, then no, we can't do it. There's only so far we can stretch the imagination. We're already stretching the imagination as it is. The notional idea of using a gap to add to something to make it into bigger, more dimensions than it was previously. then ignoring that gap. So we're using the gap to add to the dimensions of something that's already there, and then ignoring the gap to extend that back onto something else.
Well, they're all obviously extreme examples, aren't they? That's what the Gemara does.
Yeah. They're chidushim, right? They are the novel ways of building a sukkah. Yeah.
Some of it sounds totally far-fetched, but on the other hand, if it's acceptable, then that's important for somebody who hasn't got the full-sized material.
Agreed. Obviously, ideally, 4 walls is going to be best, isn't it? But if not. I'm just going to share another screen with you to show you how this translates into halacha. So here's Shulchan Aruch. Says the Shulchan Aruch, and here, if you just go back into your Gemara, 5 lines down in the Gemara, you'll see the second word in is oseh. So Yeshua ben Levi said, oseh lo tefach sochet. So Yeshua ben Levi said, when it comes to the right-angled sukkah, just make an extended tefach and we'll fill up the gap. You'll see there's a hanging aleph there above the word oseh, the beginning of the word oseh. Can you see that? Yeah. Then you go on to the left-hand side of the page. You'll see in the margins, there's an ein mishpat and ner mitzvah. These are references to halacha. So if you look, I should have. It won't be in. It will be. Hold on a second. I'll change the screen again and show you. That's right. So we always find a way around the Gemara. 1 second. Here we go. You see over here. So we've got the little aleph there, where the cursor is. Oseh on the 4th line takes you over here. The aleph here that tells you the abbreviation is Maimonides. I have to get mine says. Perek David Mehilchos Sukkah. So the 4th chapter in Hilchos Sukkah, Halacha Gimel, and so that's where it starts. Remember, the Rambam was the first to codify halacha. So Rambam knew Shas Baal Pei, knew it inside. He had an encyclopedia of Gemara, and he there distilled it down into halacha. So that's where you see the first version of halacha, and then we've got Tur Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim Simon Taf Reish Lamed at 630 Sif base. Okay, so remember that 630, chapter 630, halacha 2. Right, let me change screen. Stop this and switch to here. Share screen again. Okay, so we're looking for 630. There we've got 630. We're in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, chapter 630, halacha base 2. Says the Shulchan Aruch, the fanos hasukah im hayu shtayim zu etzel zu kamin gam. We saw this last time. If you've got a sukkah that has 2 walls next to each other, corresponding to each other, attached to each other, like a gimel, like a gamma. Yeah. A Greek letter gamma, so which we saw was a bit like that. Dofen sheyesh berchava yose al tefach. One of the walls is the width of more than a tefach. Umamida pachos mishlosha leechad minhadofanos. We take another wall and place it next to one of the kosher walls, as long as it's pachos mishlosha leechad minhadofanos, as long as it's less than 3 tefachim from one of those walls, then it's good. However, Shulchan Aruch v'yamud kana keneged hakotel says you should put a board or a beam next to, corresponding to the wall, keneged osa tefach v'yaselo suras haPesach. That's actually the next bit of the Gemara we're going to say. We're going to say the Gemara seems to say that you should. So the Halakha is going to say that you should put a beam going across to make it like a frame. Shamod kama alav ala tefach ukashera, and you should place this beam over the tefach, and therefore it will be kosher. Even if the beam doesn't actually touch them, it's still good. However, says the Ramah, so this is Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, the Ashkenazi, Moshe Ishlis, the Ashkenazi glossary adds, if the walls and this 3rd tefach wall reaches to the schach. So the schach is sitting on them. So sitting on the two walls. So you've got two walls like that. Schach is sitting on top, and then you've got a third wall less than 3 tefachim away from the other walls, and the schach is sitting on top of that as well. So ein tzarich kana al gabehem. Then you don't need a beam going across it. I think it's going to talk about whether you can make it arched or not. It's not relevant to us. Okay, so we're going to see that this halakha is lifted directly from the Gemara. Right, let me see if I can now switch pages. Go back. Can you see now the Gemara page? Excellent. Okay, fine. So I didn't need to change it. Okay,
yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's carry on with the Gemara. That's where we really were up to. Now we're up to here. Amar Rava. Says the Gemara. Rava said, in fact, it's Rava. Amar Rava. Ve'ein neteres ela b'suras ha'pesach. Says Rava that what we've just said about a tefach wall less than 3 tefachim away from the two other walls. He says that's only ve'ein neteres. It's only permitted ela b'suras ha'pesach, as we just saw in Shulchan Aruch. Only if you've got a suras ha'pesach, only if you then form it into a frame. Look at Rashi. Rashi is Amarava, the in neteres ela b'suras ha'pesach. Yeah, here. You see, just parallel with this line here. Ve'ein neteres Amarava, in neteres ela b'suras ha'pesach. Be'eruvin. The Gemara in Eruvin, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Amar hechi dami suras ha'pesach. What is a suras ha'pesach? What is this frame? The answer is kana mikan v'kana mikan. So you've got two beams. V'kana al gabehem. Sorry, you've got two upright beams and one beam going across the top. So a frame. V'hacha ka'amar Rava, and this is what Rava is saying. The tefach sheshashinu b'baraisa, that this tefach wall that we've been talking about in our brisa, shemate b'dofen shlishis, which is permitted to act as a third wall, ena mate ela im kena sola oso tefach suras ha'pesach, is only permitted if we use it to make a frame with. Al panei kol hadofen kulo, on top of all of this wall. Kate said, how do you do that? Kana shel chetzi tefach etzel hayotze. You take this tefach beam, right? Sorry, upright panel. Think of it as a fence panel, right? The fence panel roughly about 8 centimeters wide. Split it down the middle along its vertical. 4 and 4 now, 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters, which is half a tefach. You put one half next to, so we've got the next to the end of one of the full walls, and the other one you put at a distance to it, and then you lay a beam across the top. Here's the diagram. I hope you can see this. Can you see that okay? How good that is. Let me
Sorry.
Well, let me see. We've got one wall here and the other wall there. That wall and the side wall. Then attached to the wall, we put a plank of wood, half a tefach wide, there. So we've got 1, 2, 3. But this is only half a tefach. We then place another half a tefach here at the corner away from it, and then we put a beam across the top. So we created a frame. Yeah? Yeah, that's straightforward, right? Okay. This is the Kiddush already, because what we're saying now is, up to now we've said this needs to be a tefach. Actually, what we're saying is, as long as the combined parts, this bit and this bit add up to a tefach, this can be half a tefach, this can be half a tefach. You then need to put a beam across the top. Right? So again, you've got a notional wall. This is open, obviously, this is open, but it has more of the form of a wall, right? Than just putting a tefach beam there. upright there. So that's what we mean. So going back in the Gemara. Where are we? Oh, Rabbi. Yeah. So Rabbi says, "Ve'ena niteres ela b'surus ha'pesach." Yeah, in fact, Rashi says, let's just carry on in the Rashi. Eina ela im kain asu lo'usa tefach b'surus ha'pesach al panei kol hadofen kuloi. Okay, so we said, how do we do that? Kana al shelchatzi tefach etzel hayotze b'kana shelchatzi tefach l'miksua. So you put it at the branch. Kenegdo b'kana al gavei, and then you put a beam going across. Mizel lezeh. Havele ki inu kol hadofen sasum. The Pesach, Shieshloi. He says it's as if by doing so, you've got a closed wall at each of the corners, at each of the entrances. Shieshosurus Pesach, Sasima, Malahu. Because by making it into a frame, you've closed it off. So even though it's open, it's as if it's closed. Again, notionally closed. Okay. Okay, so that's the first thing we've said. That it has to be, if you're going to do it like this, you're going to use a tefach, then it has to be, and we saw that in Shulchan Aruch, it has to have this beam going across. Yeah. Go on the Gemara. Gemara continues and says, Ikka to Amri, however others say, oh, sorry, actually, I just want to put the Tosafos here. Sorry. Let's go back up. Let's go up slightly. Tosafos here, ve'enu niteres ela b'surus ha'pesach. You see that Tosafos here on the left-hand side? Here. What does that mean? Perish, it means ela im kein asu la'osu tefach b'surus ha'pesach al panei kol hadofen kuloi. That you need to put a tefach. You need to make this door frame at each corner. Okay, so the kana shel chetzi tefach etzel hayotze, the kana chetzi tefach l'miksoi, shekanegdo. Exactly the same as what's on Rashi. The kana gavehem, and then you put a beam going across the two. Tahavei ki ilu kol hadofen sasum, and again, exactly what Rashi says is as if each of the walls is now closed. Ta'afal gav v'veret kama de'erubin, and even though in the first chapter of the Gemara of Erubin, you daf yud alad on the face, lo yehivnan shi'ura lekana shel surus ha'pesach. And even though in the Gemara and Reuben we don't give the dimensions of this beam, and I feel the kanamashu, even if you've just got the smallest width of an upright beam at each side, and then one going across the top, he says, so that's the chiddush here. That although we're not saying that it has to be at least a half a tefach. Yeah, it can't be any less than that, because when it comes to sukkah, we have an added requirement of dofen nikeres. The wall has to be recognizable. See, but do you remember right back at the beginning when we talked about a sukkah which is more than 20 amas high is not kosher? It's because we said that our person's eye doesn't look up that. And we said when you're not looking up, you don't see the wall. Yeah, and the wall is what defines the sukkah. Yeah, there has to be a wall there. It has to be visible, even notionally. And therefore it has to have at least a certain amount of substance to it. So any less than, although, so we say the Gemara, so Tosafos is saying, even though the Gemara in Reuben doesn't say when it talks about Surah Pesach in terms of making mechitzas for Shabbos, here we say it has to be at least half a tefach, because any less than that, it's just totally not noticeable, and it can't then notionally be sufficient to make up a wall. So that's
for Shabbat, you don't have that limitation, or is this, no, you can't compare the two?
No, as we're saying, it says the Gemara. That's what Tosafos is saying. The Gemara in Reuben doesn't give the dimensions of the kana, of the board or the beam, because it doesn't need to have. It doesn't need that there isn't that extra requirement of a recognizable wall, which you do need for sukkah, because we know that the sukkahs define the wall are defined by its walls. So although there Gemara Neruvin doesn't give the definition of the minimum dimensions of this kaneh, this beam, here we do. We say it has to be at least half a tefach. It can't be any less than that. Okay, let's go back in the Gemara, because we've just seen that according to Rava, it's only permissible if you've got this Suras HaPesach. However, says the Gemara, Ikad to Amri, end of the line, Ikad to Amri, here we are. Ikad to Amri, Amar Rava. Some said that Rava said, sorry, I'll make sure I get the right one because it's 3 times it says it. Ikad to Amri, Amar Rava, V'niteres Nami B'Suras HaPesach. Changes it completely. Rava would say, it's also permissible with a Suras HaPesach, meaning that either or. So either you need a tefach at one end and nothing else, so 2 full walls and a tefach, that's good, or 2 half tefachim and a Suras HaPesach. So Rava is now adding another way of making the third wall. Do you understand the difference between the two? I say it again. According to Rava, the first explanation is you can only do it if it's got a Suras HaPesach. It has to have a Suras HaPesach, otherwise it's not kosher. The second understanding of Rava is, what he means is, even if you've got a Suras HaPesach, it's kosher, when you've only got half a tefach at each end, corner. But if you've got a full tefach, you wouldn't need the Suras HaPesach. And that's how we pass them. That is, you saw him back in the, let's just have a look again in the Shulchan Aruch. You saw, if the beam touches the top, then we said, and then 1 second, there's the Ramah, you don't need the Suras HaPesach, says the Ramah. If the one tefach beam goes all the way up to the top and the tzach touches it, you don't need a Suras HaPesach. Rava would say, but if it doesn't, then even using a Suras HaPesach would be enough to make it a kosher sukkah. Okay, look at Rashi. It's quite long, Rashi's here. Quite far down, it's here. V'niteres. Yeah. Says Rashi, V'niteres nami b'suras HaPesach. Mashma, the tefach sheshashinu ha'inu the parish Rebbe Simon le'el. The tefach that we taught earlier on, that Rabbi Simon explained, that even if it's less than 3 tefachim away from the wall, Oza Satima tefach etzel ha'yotze is considered to close up the gap to the end of the wall. V'atza Rabba l'meim, and along comes Rabba and says, Tim asa Suras HaPesach al panei kol hadofen. If you were to make, in addition to that, a Suras HaPesach, v'shnei kanim kol shehu, using very small, less than half a tefach beam, v'kan al gabeim, and putting one across the top, kai leva makom tefach, that would be enough in place of a whole tefach beam. Makshilei kavasei. The oihai me'achsheh. He's saying either or. So, I'm running out of paper. I'll do two really quick ones. Okay. What we're saying is this. I can't draw that well. No, I can't draw. So, according to Rava, he would say either that, 1, 2, with a full tefach there, no need for a Suras HaPesach, or he would say you can have that, and you can also have this. 2 full walls. Sorry. Here are 2 full walls, half a tefach there, half a tefach there, joined up with a beam going across the 2 of them. So those are your 2 options. Either a whole tefach there and no need for a Suras HaPesach, or half a tefach and half a tefach joined up by putting a beam across the 2, Suras HaPesach. So the second reading of Brava is either or, 2 options.
So what is the form of Surat HaPesach? Is it like a bar which you put on the roof for schach? Something like that. Is that good enough? Is that called a Surat HaPesach? Or is it much more substantial than that?
No. It just needs to be something lying on top of the two uprights.
Any sort of rod-looking thing like you have on top of put the schach up.
100%. Yeah.
And that's enough.
Yeah, as long as all it needs to do is form that shape, the Suras HaPesach, and you're good. Doesn't matter what it's made of or how it's made. Okay, back in the Gemara. So that was the second option of Rava. Third option is Ikad Amri, end of the line. Ikad Amri Amar Rava. Some say Rava said V'suricha Nami Suras HaPesach. It also needs a Suras HaPesach. And Rashi explains, what does that mean? It also needs, back in the Rashi here, where is it? A bit further down again. The Suricha Nami Suras HaPesach. It also needs a Suras HaPesach. Yeah, it says Rashi, Mashma de Tarvaihu Ba'inan Tefach Etzel HaYotzi V'kana B'zavis Shnei V'kana She'al Gabehem. According to the third understanding is you would need this and where am I? You've got 1, 2, then here a tefach and here a tefach, a full tefach each, and it would still need a Suras HaPesach. So the most stringent understanding is this also needs, even if you've got a full tefach here and a full tefach there, you need to bridge the gap between them by placing a beam on top of them. Okay? Okay. Okay. That's the third way of looking at Rava. Okay, let's go back in the Gemara. Okay, so as we come to the end of 3 understandings of Rava, if you look again, you'll see what's the halacha. Can you just see here on the word usricha? So the third explanation of Rava was usricha nami, that you're always going to need the Suras HaPesach. Here this says the Gimel. That's the next halacha in Shulchan Aruch. It's here. Says Shulchan Aruch, Hayulashne defanos zu keneged zu, ufnei mefulash. 1 second, sorry, let me say that's the right thing. Oh, that's what we saw that. Yeah, this is going back to the Mavoi. The Mavoi we said were the 2 parallel lines. You've got 2 walls opposite each other, v'nei mefulash, and open space between them. Then you would need a board of 4 and a bit tefachim. And you need to place it within 3 tefachim of one of the walls, ukashera, and then it'd be kosher. And then you also need a Suras HaPesach. That's what we just saw with Rava, the third opinion of Rava. Meaning you place a beam from the board to one of the other walls. V'yesh omrim. However, some say she'ein zeh sarach sursa pesach. Some say no, you don't need it. Again, reflecting the three positions of Rava. Says the Ramah, v'aval im ikka dofen zayin below lavud. However, if the third wall has 7 tefachim without needing to extend it notionally, ein sarach kan sursa pesach ad sof hakotel. However, v'ikka dofen zayin shu shir hechshesuka. So, going back to what we saw previously with Rabbi Shua ben Levi, we would say that if you're doing it notionally, so 4 and a bit tefachim using the less than 3 tefach gap, you would need a sursa pesach, according to what we saw from Rava. However, if you start with a 7 tefach wall in that gap between the two parallel lines, because it's already a kosher wall, then we say it's absolutely fine. There's no need to bridge the 3 tefach gap because there's already a kosher wall there in the space. Okay, so we see also we're almost incorporating all the different opinions we've seen in the Gemara, and that's how it plays out into halacha. And then he goes to the Kolshkin, and even also she'ein srichim sursa pesach meshadofen shalema. How much more so you don't need a sursa pesach if it's a complete wall. He says umash nagu b'sursa pesach, and those who are accustomed to having a sursa pesach sheisho defano shalemus. And those who are stringent, and even though they've got 4 walls, will still make a sursa pesach. He says that's not necessary. It's merely decorative. Yeah, I mean it makes it look nice, but it's not al pi halacha strictly necessary. It's interesting how we then, as I said, we've now assimilated it all into the halacha. Let's go back into the Gemara and do a little bit more. Yeah, we'll just start this. Maybe I'll have to carry on next week because we're starting it now. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah said, Shtayim kil chosan. We've said the minimum dimensions for a sukkah is it has 2 walls according to halacha, meaning of a minimum of 7 tefachim each. That's the minimum. So says the Gemara, Amar Rava, and again here you'll see the aleph here takes you over here. Over there, Takasa bucket changes it to Rabba. So Rabba, Amar Rabba, v'chein l'Shabbos. Interesting halacha says this. It says Rabba that the same halacha applies to Shabbos. What does that mean? Let's go. We'll see in a moment. Says the Gemara. Why is that? Migui to have a dofen le'inyan sukkah, have a dofen le'inyan Shabbos. So, we're going to say, just as 2 walls and a bit are sufficient for sukkahs, so they are also sufficient for Shabbos. Why? Because migoy, since it's a halakhic principle of since they are kosher walls for a sukkah, they are also kosher walls for Shabbos. Now, we need Rashi to understand what's going on here completely. Look at Rashi. V'chein l'Shabbos here, the first of the wide lines of Rashi. Says Rashi, V'chein l'Shabbos. Afal pi shesarach l'Shabbos shlosh mechitzos lasos reshus hayakid. Now, Hilchos Shabbos, we learned a little bit about this previously. For the definition of a reshus hayakid, of a private domain, is you have to have an area enclosed at least on 3 sides by 3 full walls, 3 minimum. Okay, for something to be considered to be a private domain, a house, right? A private dwelling has to have enclosed on 3 sides.
And is that including a Torah Petach?
Let's leave it on one side for the moment. Yeah, let's leave it on one side for the moment. Maybe we'll come back to that.
That's where the 2 laws come together, isn't it?
They may well be, yeah. But this is an interesting idea here, firstly. So even though on Shabbos, we say for Shabbos, Hilchos Shabbos, that for something to be considered a Rishus HaYachid, a private domain, it has to have 3 walls. Middle of the line, however, you say here, Shabbos shel Sukkos. The Shabbos which falls during Sukkos, muter lismoch al mechitzas haSukkah im asa b'rishus harabim samach lePesachos. When the Shabbos of Sukkos, we can rely on the walls of a sukkah if it's made in the public domain, which is close to the person's home. Sukkah she'ein ba'ela shtayim kilchasan u'shlishis afilu tefach. We can allow you on Shabbos of Sukkos to carry inside a sukkah that only has 2 full walls and the 3rd wall of a tefach.
Is that a halacha which is stated somewhere?
Yeah.
How do we know that?
In the Gemara.
He's trying to push something, though. He's trying to say
it's the principle of migoy. What's the thinking behind it? Since for Sukkos, we've said a kosher sukkah, meaning a kosher structure, is 2 full walls and a bit. Therefore, by definition, we've got a kosher dira, dwelling place.
And therefore, it fulfills the halacha of Eruvin.
Rak for Shabbat.
Only for Sukkot.
Ken.
Okay.
It's genius, right?
Yes. So
for all other Shabbatot of the year, you have to have a minimum of 3 full walls. There's no getting away with it.
I see. That's interesting.
But since this is the theory we're saying here, this is what Rabbi is suggesting, that since it's good enough for Sukkos to say 2 full walls and a bit, then we'll say, well, on Shabbos of Sukkos, we can rely on it. And we can allow you to carry in your sukkah, even though it doesn't have 3 full walls. But because we've defined it as a kosher sukkah, we've said that 3rd wall is like a full wall.
Right.
And on for Shabbos or Sukkos, we can say the same thing, is the suggestion. Let's just carry on in Rashi.
Because the ramification is it could be Rishon Shel Yom Tov. Shabbos can be on Rishon Shel Yom Tov.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why they probably needed this get out, or else it's not just a luxury for Shabbos Chol Moed. It could be the main day of Sukkot if we're not
right.
So it needs this sort of workaround.
Right. It's not going to allow you to carry your Arba Minim though.
No.
You can't keep lifting up. You can't keep lifting up your sukkah between home and shul with the Arba Minim in it. Yeah. But the serious issue is: would you be able to carry things in the sukkah on Shabbos, even though the sukkah doesn't have 3 walls, according to the halakhas of Shabbos? So we're saying, but since it's good enough for to be considered as full walls for sukkahs, then on Shabbos sukkahs it's good enough. Let's just carry on the Rashi. Middle of the first line, the first wide line. Shabbos shel sukkahs muter lismoch on the chitzas sukkah. The Shabbos of sukkahs we can rely on the walls of the sukkah. Im asa b'rishus harabim samach lePesachos. If it's made in the street close to his home, sukkah de'ein ba'elam shtayim kilchasan u'shlishis afilu tefach. A sukkah that's only got 2 full walls, and the 3rd, which is even a tefach. Machnis and motzi hameni, you can bring in and out of it the base of your house. For Alpha Gav, the Bishar Shabbosos, even though on other Shabbos of the year, lo mishteri, we don't permit it. We don't permit it. So there's a big chiddush. That's the first explanation. Says Rashi, inami, alternatively, Bishar mechitzas she'enan shel sukkah lo mishteri. With other walls, which aren't walls of a sukkah, so normal walls, we say, have to be 4 tefachim minimum. Normally, the definition of a wall is 4 tefachim. Remember, we said a house less than 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim is not considered to be a house. A wall less than 4 tefachim is not considered to be a wall. See, even though, so With other, so alternative we can suggest is this: with other walls, which is not of a sukkah, lo mishteri bahachi, we wouldn't allow a wall of a tefach. But bahachi, however, the Shabbos of Sukkah sharib. However, on the Shabbos of Sukkot, we do permit it. Why? Says Rashi, Demigo Tahavi Tefach Admirei Rachmana LeMoshe the Sukkah. That since Hashem taught Moshe Rabbeinu, says Halacha Moshe Sinai, that when it comes to a tefach in relation to the walls of Sukkah, Tahavele Dofen Shleim, that it should be considered like a full wall, the Sukkah for Sukkah. Have Dofen Navi b'Shabbos to Sukkah in Shabbos. So too, the walls of the Sukkah should be considered on Shabbos Sukkahs to be proper walls for Shabbos, meaning you can carry within them. Okay, does that make sense? Okay.
So I guess the question I have then is, given that it's fine for Sukkahs, and Sukkahs includes Shabbat, where did it come through that you have to have 3 full walls? And why didn't they just say, if Sukkahs allows 2 and a bit,
yeah,
and it includes Shabbat, surely 2 and a bit is fine for every Shabbat.
Yeah. It's a good question, and we'll see if you learn the Gemara in Eruvin. The Gemara in Eruvin will derive. Sorry, the Gemara in Eruvin will derive why three walls are necessary. 3 full walls are necessary for normal Shabbos considered to be an enclosed area. Again, because we don't have the drosha of, when it comes to Shabbos. See, the reason why we're able to say 2 and a bit for Sukkos is because we've got the drosha of Sukkos. Yeah. We don't have that by Shabbos. We can't. We're going to suggest, okay, let's extend it to Shabbos the other way around, but we can't, because I'll tell you why. Because Shabbos is more chomer than Sukkos. That on Shabbos, the prohibition of carrying is serious. It's an Issa, it's a Torah prohibition that carries skila, the death penalty. We can't mess about. We can't say, you know what, 3 walls only means 2 and a bit. We can't make that drosha because we haven't got a apostle to attach it to start with. And secondly, you can't go for something which is less severe to something which is more severe. Yeah,
that's overridden for Shabbat Sukkos because we've already established Sukkos is allows 2 and a bit. Therefore, in that one particular one, that must trump.
At the moment, we're suggesting it. At the moment, we haven't concluded. We're suggesting it at the moment,
okay.
and it's quite a big novel suggestion to say that, based on that exactly thing you're saying. Yeah, I mean, you and I couldn't sit around and say, you know what, it's good enough for Sukkot, therefore it should be good enough for Shabbos. Yeah, it takes the greatness of Rabbah to be able to say something like that, right? But yeah, the Gemara is going to test it and say that's what we're only going to start to see it today. But next time, the Gemara is going to say, hold on a second, how can you say that? How can you derive from Sukkot to Shabbos? Even how can you say for 1 Shabbos a year we're going to allow you to use a leniency which was unique to Sukkot and apply it to Shabbos, where normally we wouldn't even consider it? That's the question. Yeah. And that's very, and then we'll see. So let's just see it, and then we'll just stop it here. But we'll just start to see the question. So go back in the Gemara. The Shabbos. So it's a big statement. Why? So Migo Dahabi Dofen the Indian Sukkah, Dofen the Indian Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Esvei Abaya. So Abaya raises a question. In fact, raises an objection to this suggestion. So he says, Migoi. Do we really say Migoi in this case, that since it's good enough for Sukkot, it's good enough for Shabbos Sukkot? Would we really say that? But Hatani, we've learned in the Brisa, Dofen Sukkah, Dofen Shabbos, that the walls of a Sukkah are like the walls for Shabbos. Ubilvad shelo yehi ben kana lechaveru shlosha tefachim. As long as as long as there's not a 3 tefachim gap between the walls of the third wall. should we say, of any of the walls actually. Yeah. So yeah. So we're gonna. So the first part is that what Shabbos walls and Sukkah walls share in common is this idea of lavud. As long as there's less than 3 tefachim gap between the boards, then we ignore it. It's good. That's the same for Shabbos as well. When we're making our three walls, we don't have to be 3 full walls. They can be with gaps in them. As long as those gaps are less than 3 tefachim, they're good. However, says the Gemara, look here, the Seira Shabbos al Sukkah, but Shabbos is in addition to Sukkot, meaning it's more stringent than Sukkot. Why? Shah Shabbos Einun Teres Ela Ba'omen Merubal Poretz. The difference is that when it comes to Shabbos walls, we have a principle that is Omed Merubal Ala Poretz, that the uprights have to be more than the gaps, meaning you've got to have more solid material than gaps. Yeah. So if you have too many gaps and the so for example you've got let's say 6 3 tefachim gaps, which makes a total of 18 tefachim of gaps. Yes. Mm-hmm. But you've only got 4. Let me do my maths here. You've only got 2. No, 1 second. So we've got 18 tefachim of gaps. Yeah, and you've got 4 by 4 tefachim of walls. So you've got 4 walls, each of 4 tefachim each. 4 4s are 16. You've got more gaps in total. You've got 18 tefachim of gap compared to 16 tefachim of solid material. That's no good. That's a stringency when it comes to mechitzos or Shabbos, which is not the same when you think about a sukkah. Because if you think about it, if you've got a sukkah of 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim by a tefach, that gives you 15 tefachim of closed up space. Yeah? But you've then got 6 tefachim, actually it's not quite right, because hold on, let's break it up a little bit. Let's say you've got 4 tefachim, a 3 tefach gap, and 3 tefachim. Then 4 tefachim, 3 tefach gap, 4 tefachim. Then 1 tefach, 6 tefachim gap, 7 tefachim gap. I'm not going to add it up, but I think we can agree there's more gaps than there are walls. That would be perfectly fine for a sukkah. Because as long as you've got less than 3 tefachim, you're good. Even if the gaps are more substantial than the solid, it's good. But it wouldn't be good for Shabbos. So our question on rubber is, how can you suggest that one Shabbos in the year, the Shabbos of Sukkot, we can employ the principle of Migoy, since it's good enough for Sukkah walls, it's good enough for Shabbos walls on Sukkot, where we know that they're apples and pears. That the comparison between Sukkah walls and Shabbos walls is not a good comparison, because there's a stringency when it comes to Shabbos walls, which is that even though you can have gaps in the walls, the combined gaps cannot be more than the solid material. Whereas in Sukkot, they quite often can be, and it's perfectly fine. As long as you're employing lavud at all times, you can have a massive open space, one complete open side, plus another bit pretty much open, and you're still good. So fundamentally, this is going to be a big problem. How are we going to square the two? I suggest we leave it there. When we carry on next week, we'll pick it up again here next week, go over that again, so we're clear in our mind, and we'll see how Rabbi defends himself, and then how we sort of re-understand what Rabbi was saying, and then we come to the conclusion. Okay.
This is quite revolutionary, isn't it? To start assuming that, though.
Which bit?
That it's okay for Sukkot, but not for Shabbat regular.
Yeah.
So you can't do a Kal V'chomer or a Gezerah Shava or anything, can you? I mean, to compare one with the other, you can't do that. Then
Well, we're using Migoy. Migoy is a similar.
Migoy is a similar
similar
situation.
to a Gezerah, similar to a Kal V'chomer, those sort of things. It's a since. It's a logical inference. Since such and such is okay, since A is okay, B should also be okay.
Well, I'll go along with that.
Yeah, it's logic. It's logical, but sometimes logic is flawed, right? Because you can only say since X, because only if A and B or X and Y share common properties can you say that.
Yes, of course. Yes,
it's like saying since an apple tastes sweet, a pear also tastes sweet. Yeah, or so 1 second. Since an orange is citrus and it tastes sweet, so too will a lemon taste sweet because it's also a citrus. There's a logic to it.
But obviously, the two things which you're comparing are the crucial matter. It's like saying, well, since he goes to that shul on Shabbos, I can go as well. You see, so that obviously is flawed.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure there's any logic when it comes to what shul people go to.
That's right.
Yeah, and on that note, I look
There's
forward to
more logic in what shul you don't go to, I would have thought, right?
May well be. And on that note, I look forward to seeing you in shul, whatever shul that may be.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Rabbi. Good night, all.
Bye.